Did you by any chance watch yesterday or catch Matt Lucas on the Great British Bake Off? He had a great parody, a great spoof of the Prime Minister's coronavirus briefings just after we had all watched, or at least many of us had watched, the Prime Minister telling us what is the latest and what are the latest measures on COVID-19 in England. Now, I loved that parody. It's a very short blob of a few seconds, and I'll put the YouTube link in the description box in case you would like to see it. But that's what makes this country a great country, that we can actually make fun of our leaders, of our politicians, of all peoples. And we can do it in a way that does not necessarily get people anxious, get people too upset, too angry. However, we also send a message. And what was that message, in my opinion, of Matt Lucas's parody? Basically, that the Prime Minister constantly delivers contradictory and incoherent messages when it comes to COVID-19. It's a shame, actually, because if we go all the way back to February, March, and fast forward 6 months into September 2020, we have had so many U-turns, so many flip-flops, so many, yes, this is going to be effective, and no, this is not effective, and we need to do something else. So much so that we now have basically 4 nations in full devolution when it comes to COVID-19. Scotland with Nicola Sturgeon is going its own way. In my opinion, it's ahead of the curve, and we seem to follow what she does and the rules she applies a few days or a couple of weeks later. Then we have Northern Ireland and we have Wales. And what saddens me, and it was evident to me in Matt Lucas's parody, is that this incoherence, this lack of consistency by the Prime Minister, who at the end of the day is where the buck stops, not with his ministers, not with Matt Hancock, not even with Michael Gove. He basically delivers messages, but he does not seem to be able to deliver a tough message. He is almost saying there apologetically, you need to do this. But I wish you didn't need to do this. Spiritually, I'm not there. Mentally, I'm not there, but I have to say this, I have to do this. And this does not convey the right message to us, the ordinary men and women citizens of this country, to follow the rules. So in a sense, it's very difficult. And to come in that briefing of his and blame the rule breakers for the spike, the second spike in the infection, that I thought was a little bit over the top, given the inconsistency and the contradictions and the changes and the failures we have experienced in this country since February and March last, well, I was going to say last year, but actually it's not last year, it's this year. Why can't we be like Germany? Why can't we be like Iceland? Why can't we be like South Korea, like Singapore, like Malaysia? What is it that we're a great nation, we're one of the developed countries, we have the technology and we have the brains. Why have we been unable to get this test and trace scheme working? I mean, it all hinges on 2 things: the vaccine, which is yet to come, and absent a vaccine, the test, trace or track, isolate. I've said it time and again in previous episodes already, and I repeat it yet again today. Why? Why is it that we always have to prevaricate? And incidentally, if we're going to blame rule breakers, do you remember the name Dominic Cummings? Do you remember his little flit to, was it Durham and then to Barnard Castle? Was that not rule breaking? Why did that go unnoticed at 10 Downing Street? The Prime Minister said something which caught my attention. He said in his short address to the nation, "A stitch in time saves 9." I like that. But should that expression, should that saying be applied toward the end of September 2020? Or should that be in March, in April, in May, and even in the 2 or 3 months when we had a relative lull and where we could have redoubled our efforts in order to get the test and trace up to scratch? Yes, it is working. It is working far better now than it did a few months ago. But the trick is not to compare ourselves with those who are doing worse and to say, oh, well, look at Spain. Oh, well, look at France. Oh, well, look at, I don't know, where else? Look at the United States. No. Why not look at those who are better than us and try to emulate them? That is how you move forward. And without the inconsistency, with leadership that is consistent and that takes the right decisions. And this is why, no matter what the other arguments are about an independent Scotland or whether Nicola Sturgeon is playing a political game with London and with England, that doesn't matter. She is showing leadership and she is showing consistency throughout, even though Scotland is not free from COVID-19. So, as I conclude today's very short episode, number 36, of arm wrestling with COVID-19 in London, let me also add one little thing. Coming back to what the Prime Minister said, a stitch in time saves 9. I would also remind him of another saying that I like. What goes around comes around. We're going to have difficult months ahead, days, weeks, and months. And I wouldn't be surprised if we change the rules yet again, over and over. But in the meantime, please be careful. And please remember that you might be supermen and superwomen, but your neighbor, your friend, your relative might not be. Take care. Be considerate, and let's keep our fingers crossed that this stitch will be one that will see us through the next few days and weeks.